Hello, welcome again to Psalms from the Sofa. In my case, it's Psalms from the Study. In Psalm 126, we looked at the subject of death. In Psalm 126, we will look at the subject of bereavement, a subject that many of us will have experienced, and during this time, proportionally more people will experience as it is the coronavirus pandemic. My wife Deborah and myself are Care for the Family bereavement awareness event facilitators as we help churches as they seek to walk alongside grieving people as they travel along the path of bereavement. In the events that we run, we include Psalm 126 as part of its content. It has been estimated that there are about 16 theories and models of grief, whose authors include Louise Tonkin, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, William Worden, and so many others. However, the best model can be found in this particular psalm. So please read with me. When the Lord brought back the captives of Zion, we were like men who dreamed. Our mouths were filled with laughter, our tongues with songs of joy. Then it was said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us, and we are filled with joy. Restore our fortunes, O Lord, like streams in the Negev. Those who sow in tears will reap songs of joy. He who goes out weeping, carrying seed to sow, will return with songs of joy, carrying sheaves with him. It is the last verse that I want to concentrate on because it sets out the process that many experience in their bereavement journey. The background is that the people have been living in a state where they felt as though they were living in unreality, like being in a dream. The initial stages of grief are often like that, when we go about in a dreamlike existence, barely functioning. The Negev desert was, as its name indicated, a dry and arid place. Grief can often do that to us, making us feel as though it is an effort to communicate with other people and even with God. However, God has promised that there are better times ahead. Indeed, for 80 to 90% of people who are bereaved, they will progress well along the bereavement journey with adequate support from other people. The remaining 10 to 20% may need specialist help from doctors and or counsellors, but they will still need others to surround them, to walk with them along that journey. If the grieving person has not moved on from the initial stage of grief, it is then advisable to seek professional help. However, going back to the psalm, the first thing in the typical process of bereavement is that we notice that there will be weeping. It's all right for people to express and understand their emotions. It's difficult in the British culture, particularly among men, to keep a stiff upper lip, to keep our emotions in check. We are often told to just get on with life, which is demonstrated, for example, by the fact that many employers only allow 2 weeks at the maximum for their workers after a death of a loved one. The problem is that the bottling up of the emotions results in dramatic results later on. It's almost like a pressure cooker where the building up of steam continues so the lid is forced off with great velocity. It's the same with the holding in of the emotions, such as the anger and regret. When it blows, it will come out with enormous strength, for the effects will be devastating for the grieving person, for those around them, and could be very destructive. Emotions are a natural God-given outlet. In Luke chapter 11, we see the Son of God outside the tomb of his friend Lazarus. Even though Jesus knew what was going to happen, we are told that Jesus wept. The verb used indicates the deepest pathos. The outrage that Jesus felt as the effects of sin was demonstrated in the death of his friend. It is good to acknowledge that we may feel anger, regret, deepest sadness. Talk to God. After all, his shoulders are wide enough. He too has experienced the death of his loved one as Jesus breathed his last breath on the cross, with the momentary separation in that great eternal relationship. It's good to talk with others about how you feel. We are God's instruments with skin on. We are created to listen, which is why we were created with 2 ears and 1 mouth. The second action is the going out. Life still goes on, and in time the re-engagement with life is necessary. It's valid for the person to be sad. However, people may see the time after the bereavement as an opportunity to opt out for some time. It's impossible to hide under the duvet, especially as it might get smelly after a time. At some point, it will be necessary to make decisions and take actions to reinvest and take part in life. It's often easier to do this with the help of other people. In these unusual times, it might mean re-engagement through video conferences, through many of the platforms like WhatsApp and Facebook and Zoom. In the film Rabbit Hole, Becca and her mother are talking a year on from the death of Becca's child, as they are packing up the contents of her son's vacant room, sorting out what toys and clothes to remain. Becca stepped back and looked at the enormous pile before her, then asked her mother, "Does it ever go away?" Her mother replied wisely, "No, it changes though. At some point it becomes bearable. It turns into something that you can crawl out from under and carry like a brick in the pocket. And you even forget it for a while. Then you reach in, for whatever reason, and there it is. All right, that, which could be awful, but not all the time. It's kind of, not that you like it exactly, but it's what you got instead of your son. So you carry it around, and it doesn't go away, which is fine, actually. As a help to facilitate this action, there are funeral directors, churches, and other organisations that run bereavement cafes and other opportunities for those who have experienced the death of a loved one to meet up with other people in similar situations once we can meet with other people again, that is. It seems strange that as we emerge from bears from hibernation, coming from our caves of guilt and despair and grief, into a world that might have seemed to have moved on without us. Indeed, it might seem or even appear to be oblivious to what we have gone through. But be honest as you find it difficult to navigate around. Be prepared to momentarily look back into the cave, only to re-emerge even more stronger to face the realities of your new normal. The third stage is the carrying of seeds. The bereavement journey is better travelled believing in seeds of hope, that there can be a better but different normal future. The seeds carry the potential for new life. It helps with the reinvesting of the future and a re-engagement with society, the neighbourhood, the friends, the family. It does not mean you forget about the person who has died because you have lost your hopes and dreams. But life gets bigger. The grief does not diminish. It's a bit like how we demonstrate what Louise Tonkin has helpfully illustrated. I've got 3 glasses with me here. The first one is a smaller glass. You can see that grief takes up most of the glass. It's when we're preoccupied with the grief and the loss that we have experienced. Then over time, life gets bigger. The grief has not diminished, but life around it has become larger. Those things that the person that we've lost has left behind in our lives is still influencing how we carry on life. And lastly, this larger glass. Notice again, life has got bigger, but the grief has remained exactly the same. The penultimate step is the songs of joy. Eventually there can be enjoyment in life. The seeds of joy can grow into songs of joy. It's still possible to feel joy even after the most devastating bereavement. It's not the sort of joy that we would have imagined, but it still can be good. The hopes and dreams that you had with the other person have disappeared with their death, so you have to look to a future without them, but not without its own opportunities. There should be no guilt experience if we don't constantly think about the person who died. Their investment in our lives will be seen in the choices that we make, and we would have been influenced by them just as we have influenced them. The final stage is the carrying of the sheaves. The seeds of hope can grow into a new, fulfilling life. The seeds of hope can grow and multiply into something that is fruitful. God may redeem any situation, bring good out of the ruins of pain and sadness. He gives us memories of the past to give us joys in the future, until we are in the heavenly place where we are told in the book of Revelation there will be no tears or crying, because the old order of sin and death would have passed away. May you know the riches of God as we use the words of my favourite hymn, Abide with me. In life, in death, O Lord, abide with me.